In about 10 days, Ross is gonna throw him away. I'm gonna be real with you, Meech. If Rick Ross, seeing what he did to you, because he knew what he was doing standing on the side of him, right?
I've seen a lot of posts about the Big Meech concert getting canceled. What I'm not seeing is anybody blaming Rick Ross for this shit. Nobody is saying, yo, Rick Ross, it's your fault.
February 13th, the Big Meech benefit concert was supposed to be legendary. Too many big names to list, but let's salute some of them. Lil Baby, Bossman D-Lo, 21 Savage, Sexy Red, and of course, Ricky Rose himself. This was the first time something like this had ever been done. But now, Big Meech is losing it. That massive comeback concert? Cancelled. The $1 million deals? Gone. His family? Struggling. And where's Rick Ross? Nowhere to be found when Meech needs him most. This was supposed to be a celebration, but instead, it's a disaster. Tonight, we're breaking down how Rick Ross went from being Meech's biggest supporter to his biggest problem. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why Big Meech is spiraling. And trust me, if you were in his shoes, you would be too. But before we dive in, have you noticed something strange about Rick Ross lately? That mysterious shoulder injury that popped up out of nowhere? The way he keeps dodging questions about Big Meech? That's where the real story lies. While everyone was focused on the beef between Big Meech and 50 Cent, something huge just happened that flipped this entire situation upside down. 50 Cent, who has been watching all of this unfold, just reposted something from someone deep in the trenches, someone with real connections to both Meech and Ross. This isn't just internet gossip. This isn't some random theory. This is straight from someone who knows these players personally. And what they revealed about Rick Ross's true intentions? It exposes a level of betrayal that nobody saw coming. Again, I've seen people talking about the Big Meech concert being canceled, but where are the voices holding Rick Ross accountable? Nobody is saying, Rick Ross, this is on you. But here's the truth. What looked like Rick Ross supporting Big Meech was actually a calculated move to stay relevant. Think about it. What better way to keep your name buzzing than inserting yourself into a long-standing feud between legends? Industry insiders say Ross had this planned from the moment he heard about Meech's release. The second Ross caught wind that Meech was coming home, he reached out, wasting no time. Let's break down what really happened. Ross sweet-talked Meech, hyping him up with promises of a massive welcome-back concert. The biggest names in hip-hop would be there to celebrate Meech's return. And the best part? It would help Meech raise the money he desperately needed after nearly 2 decades behind bars. A man who just did 15 years trying to rebuild his life, and Ross saw an opportunity for himself. He didn't see a friend in need. He saw dollar signs and clout. But what happened next? It blew up in Meech's face. And not just a little, it was a full-on explosion. When 50 Cent, someone who had actually been holding Meech down for years, stepped in and started exposing the truth, everything started falling apart. See, when people were talking about the legal case and all that, nobody cared. But when 50 started speaking, suddenly everyone was paying attention. Now let's get real about what's really sinister here. According to industry sources, Rick Ross was working behind the scenes to get that concert shut down. And then, he had the audacity to blame it all on 50 Cent, without even saying a word publicly. If that's not the ultimate manipulative move, then I don't know what is. But let's pause for a second, because ZIP, an insider with real street knowledge, dropped some bombshells that will leave you speechless. Yo, he never snitched on nobody. He's official, some are saying. But ZIP? He doesn't see it that way. He says, just because someone didn't rat doesn't automatically make them a legend. And here's the crazy part. While Big Meech is out here struggling, cut off from support, betrayed by Ross, and on bad terms with 50, guess what Rick Ross is busy doing? Promoting his own cryptocurrency. That's right, the so-called biggest boss is out here pushing something called Boss Token. You see what I'm doing right now? My shoulder broke, but we still getting to the money, Ross bragged. This ain't no pump and dump, baby. We bossing up. So ask yourself, was Rick Ross ever really in Meech's corner? Or was Meech just another stepping stone in Ross's game? And here's where things get even more suspicious. That shoulder injury Ross suddenly started flaunting? The one that popped up right as all this drama with Meech started heating up? The timing is way too convenient. And it doesn't stop there. Ross has been running these luxury car shows, charging fans thousands for VIP access, all while Meech's family is reportedly struggling to pay the bills. Multiple sources from Atlanta to Miami are saying the same thing. These business ventures, from Boss Token to the car shows, aren't just business moves. They're scams. People are already complaining about losing money with nothing to show for it. And about that shoulder injury? Word on the street is that Big Meech himself might have had something to do with it. I'm not saying it happened, but I'm telling you, people close to the situation are whispering about it. After finding out how Ross played him, all that built-up anger from 15 years behind bars had to go somewhere. And if he took it out on Ross? Would anybody really be shocked? But wait, before you take that as fact, consider this. What if Ross is faking or exaggerating this injury to play the sympathy card? What if this is just another distraction? A way to make people forget about how he abandoned Meech? Because when you look at Ross's history, this isn't the first time he's done something like this. Remember the Larry Hoover benefit concert fiasco in 2022? That event was supposed to be about freedom and justice, but instead, it turned into yet another Rick Ross disappearing act. When Ross dropped Larry Hoover's name in a track, he knew exactly what he was doing, name-dropping a legend for clout, riding that wave straight to ticket sales. But the second things got complicated, poof, he was gone. The Rick Ross concerts, scheduled for Charlotte and Greensboro, were suddenly canceled. The reason? Security concerns. But was that the real reason? Not a chance. Ross ghosted the event, leaving fans in the dark. And when asked about it, he didn't even have the backbone to admit his role in the cancellation. Instead, he threw his own promoters under the bus, saying, "I canceled the rest of the tour because the promoter wasn't handling business properly." Really, Ross? You just woke up one day and realized your tour dates were canceled? Make it make sense. And here's where things get even crazier. The real story came out shortly after. Insiders claimed that the head of the gangster disciples, Larry Hoover himself, was not happy about Ross using his name for profit. But did that stop Ross? Nope. Instead, he tried to spin the narrative. "Anybody that knows anything about Mr. Hoover knows I put him in my song out of support," Ross claimed. "I was just in Chicago a week and a half ago." But let's ask the real question here. If Ross could turn his back on Larry Hoover and face zero consequences, what made Big Meech think he'd be treated any differently? Now, let's get into something that makes this whole betrayal even more twisted. The man who abandoned Big Meech, who left him high and dry, built his entire career on deception. Let's talk about Rick Ross's real identity. Because guess what? Rick Ross isn't even his real name. His actual name? William Leonard Roberts II. And here's the kicker. He stole the identity of an actual kingpin. The real Rick Ross was a legendary drug trafficker who was locked up when this fake Ross came along and took his name, his story, and his image. Not only that, but the real Rick Ross even took the rapper to court over it. And this is where the ultimate bombshell dropped. The so-called biggest boss in hip-hop? The man claiming to have run Miami's drug scene? He was actually working for the system. Yep, you heard that right. Ross wasn't a kingpin. He was a correctional officer. And the moment this information came out, the industry went into shock. Imagine this. The man who built his career rapping about the streets was out here locking people up. When Ross got exposed, he even had to admit it in court. The judge asked, "Are you a kingpin? A boss? Ross?" "No, Your Honor." The entire courtroom went silent. The judge pressed him further. "Then what were you before you were a rapper?" Ross had no choice but to confess. A correctional officer. Boom. The so-called biggest boss was out here working for the system. And somehow, despite being exposed, the judge still ruled in his favor. No wonder people in the industry whisper about Ross being a federal informant. And that's where things get even more suspicious. What if Ross was never really on Big Meech's side? What if he was just infiltrating hip-hop, stirring up beef and creating chaos? Maybe that's why he's always pushing buttons with 50 Cent, getting artists to slip up, feeding information to the powers that be. So let's bring it back. This is the man Big Meech put his trust in. A walking red flag, but instead of seeing the warning signs, Meech ignored them. He had 15 years behind bars to develop a sense for snakes, and yet, he still fell for Ross's lies. And what did it cost him? Everything, because let's not forget, Big Meech already had 50 Cent in his corner. A man who actually put his money where his mouth was. While Meech was sitting behind bars, who kept his name alive? 50 Cent. Who turned BMF into a hit TV series, bringing Meech's story to a whole new generation? 50 Cent. Who sent Meech's family money, visited him behind bars, and actually had business plans to set him up for success? 50 Cent. But what did Meech do? He traded a real partnership for empty promises. Just days before Meech started publicly aligning with Rick Ross, 50 Cent and Tony Yayo actually visited Meech, congratulating him on his release. They sat down, talked about real money moves. Millions were on the table, and then Ross swooped in, with his fake promises of a movie deal, a flashy comeback concert, and all the hype in the world. But let's be real, this wasn't about celebrating Big Meech. This was calculated warfare. Ross saw a chance to hit 50 Cent where it hurt. Think about it. 50's been making serious bank from the BMF story. So what better way to mess with him than by turning Meech against him? Ross didn't just want to celebrate Meech. He wanted to steal the BMF brand right from under 50's nose. And Meech fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. When 50 Cent saw what was happening, he didn't hold back. He hit Instagram with a picture of a rat and captioned it with the line, "I think I'm Big Meech," a direct shot at Ross's 2010 hit BMF. 50 wasn't about to let this slide. And guess what? Even neutral voices in the industry started speaking up. Andrew Schultz said it best. 50 is never wrong when it comes to beef. If 50 doesn't mess with you, I don't mess with you, because there's always a reason. And here's where the real twist comes in. Rick Ross himself knows he messed up. The same man who orchestrated this entire betrayal is now trying to apologize to 50 Cent. Talk about switching gears faster than a race car driver. One minute, Ross was trying to steal BMF from 50. The next, he's practically begging for forgiveness. Ross even said, 50, let's put it to the side. I'm really a good guy. But 50? He wasn't having it. It ain't time for that yet, he said. When I see him, I hug him, but I don't speak to him. Translation? You're dead to me, Ross. And that's the thing. When you beef with 50 Cent, you beef for life. This isn't just a small mistake. This is a career-ending move. Even Whack 100 had to speak on it, saying Meech fumbled the bag. 50 could have taken that 19 years Meech served and turned it into 5 seasons of a show and a blockbuster movie. And what did Meech get from Ross instead? A canceled concert and a bunch of broken promises? Ross played him, used him for clout, and threw him away like trash. And now, Big Meech is completely lost. His comeback, ruined. His family, struggling. His legacy, in shambles. And the worst part, he did it to himself. All right, let's keep exposing the truth. Big Meech spent 15 years dreaming of his comeback, only to watch it all fall apart because he trusted the wrong person. Everything he worked for, gone. And now, he's left picking up the pieces while Rick Ross is out here counting his money. Think about what Meech gave up to align with Ross. He had a real opportunity with 50 Cent, a man who actually had his best interests at heart. 50 had already turned BMF into a massive TV hit, bringing Meech's legacy to an entirely new audience. The money was rolling in, the deals were lined up, and Meech had the perfect setup for a fresh start. Then Ross came along with his flashy promises and big talk. And what did Meech do? He threw away a golden opportunity for an illusion. And now, the reality is setting in. No concert, no movie, no real support, just empty promises and a damaged reputation. Even worse, the industry is turning against him. See, the real players in hip-hop don't respect moves like this. When someone betrays loyalty, the streets remember. And now, even OGs and industry veterans, the ones who rarely speak on drama, are calling Meech out. Whack 100 didn't hold back. Meech had a good 30 to 50 million he could have made with 50 Cent. He fumbled it. That's real money Meech lost. Not just a couple of club appearances, not just a hyped-up event. We're talking about generational wealth. Gone. And here's the crazy part. People saw this coming. Just days before the Big Meech concert was supposed to happen, people were already warning, in about 10 days, Ross is going to throw him away. And that's exactly what happened. Rick Ross didn't just disappear, he's out here thriving off of Meech's downfall. He's promoting his boss token cryptocurrency, running luxury car shows, and charging fans thousands of dollars for VIP access. Meanwhile, Meech's family is struggling to pay the bills. How does that make sense? But here's where it gets even darker. That mysterious shoulder injury Ross started flexing, the one that just so happened to appear when this drama started heating up, people in the streets are whispering that Meech might have had something to do with it. I'm not saying it happened, but let's just say, if Meech found out how Ross played him and decided to handle it, nobody would be surprised. 15 years of built-up frustration, 15 years of dreaming of a comeback, and then getting set up and betrayed by the one man who was supposed to help him? If Meech took that anger out on Ross, can you really blame him? But wait, before you take that as fact, there's an even bigger theory that makes even more sense. What if, hear me out, Rick Ross is faking or exaggerating this injury for sympathy? Think about it. He knows he's under fire. He knows people are turning on him. So what better way to shift the focus than by playing the victim? This isn't the first time he's pulled a disappearing act when things got messy. Remember the Larry Hoover concert scandal? Same pattern. He hypes up an event, promises the world, and then when things get difficult, vanished. And when people called him out, he made excuses, blamed promoters, and acted like he had nothing to do with it. Ross has a history of manipulating situations to his advantage. And now, he's doing it again, this time with Big Meech. So the real question is, did Rick Ross ever truly care about Big Meech, or was he just another pawn in Ross's game? Because from the outside looking in, it's obvious. Ross saw an opportunity, took advantage of it, and the second it wasn't benefiting him anymore, Meech was left to rot. And that's the problem with fake loyalty. Meech was blinded by the illusion of support, and now he's paying the price. And what's Rick Ross doing while Meech is suffering? Counting his money and moving on to the next hustle. But the streets? They never forget. Let me ask you this. Can Big Meech come back from this? Or has Rick Ross completely ruined his chances at rebuilding his legacy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I'm bringing you the real stories that they don't want you to know. Until next time, remember, watch what people do, not what they say.